today I have with us someone by the name of Kenneth Applegate, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. So, Kenneth, 20 years ago, due to a variety of health issues, he began his daily personal practice of gratitude. And since 2007, through his experience, expertise, he has helped others discover the exponential power of gratitude through reframing their difficult transactional tasks into transformational experiences, all those that foster greater self-reliance, innovation, and resilience. Today, he's here to talk to us about how he went from a fear-fueled life to one transformed by gratitude and how we can achieve the same thing. Kenneth, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. And as you can tell, I'm completely tongue twisted today. It's like I'm like a but we'll keep going. So I always like to ask the guests, especially how did this whole thing come about? So 20 years ago, what was it that you faced, or how did you even think of becoming into this gratitude practice?
Well, 20 years ago was pretty much the bottom of the bottom. Um, I had been dealing with health issues that had been escalating and evolving up until that point, and it had been 10 years in the making. Um, Now, I grew up overseas, and I had grown up in a specific culture. I grew up in the Philippines, and then I came here to the U.S. After 18 years of growing up in the Philippines, and that was, it wasn't there wasn't so much of a culture shock because I had still visited my family out here in the U.S. every couple of years, so it wasn't that much of a culture shock, but it was enough of a culture shock because I came here on my own.
Mm.
Um, and so I came here on my own, and there was a lot of things that were different. And I was handling a lot of stresses that were home related, related to just leaving home, and missing my family.
Right.
And that compounded. I didn't really get a chance to resolve those. And I was trying to figure out how to, make life work here in the United States, making my way, understanding how things worked. And one stress led after another. And I felt when I first got here to the US, I kind of felt this air of at the same time freedom, right? There was stress, but there was freedom also, and the stress that came from that freedom. And I thought, okay, this is my time. I'm going to make something of myself. I had kind of an entitlement attitude at
Mm-hmm.
first,
Mm-hmm.
and um, and I started going for things, and I started applying myself, not really knowing how everything worked, and and there was just one stress after the other. I didn't really know how to handle my stresses, and and I would eat my feelings, you
Oh,
know,
don't we all?
and I would eat my feelings. There was sadness at first, there was some anger, but I was able to get over it a little bit, but not all the way through. And that became more apparent as time grew. So did I. And before you know it, after 7 or 8 years, I was almost 300 pounds. I gained almost 100 pounds. I gained 85 pounds from the time I came to the US. 7 or 8 years afterwards, I was not only eating my feelings, but I was drinking a gallon and a half of soda a day. There's a
Mm.
lot of things I was doing that was self sabotage. I was also appreciating the wrong things. I was appreciating a lot of the wrong things in terms of my choice in media, movies, music, what I was reading, people I was hanging around with, ideas that were toxic, and
Right.
so these were not helping me at all. Um, and so that all of that combined with not being able to handle my stress, I was a big mess. I was bordering on so many metabolic issues and health conditions. And 20 years ago, I kind of just hit the bottom of the bottom, and I was so lethargic. I was so fatigued, out of energy, exhausted, and and I knew I had to change things, especially for my kids.
Right.
Right. So at the time, 10 years ago, I had, or excuse me, 20 years ago, at that time I had, oh my gosh, I think I had 3 kids at the time. Anyway,
Okay, let's tell the audience how many you have right now. How
I
many
have
kids do you have?
seven. I have
Exactly.
seven
And that's
kids.
why you're kind of forgetting how many were born by 20 years
I
ago.
do. I forget, but at that time it was around three. So now I have seven, but they're all out of the house now. I'm an empty nester. My wife and I are empty nesters. But that's kind of how things evolved. Life just kind of got stressful and hectic, and I didn't know how to handle it. And for the for the sake of my kids, I had to learn how to. And I was fueled by fear up until that point. You know, everything was fueled by fear, and it was not a good life.
Right. But hold on, let me interrupt you for a minute because there's a lot of things that you said
Yes.
that let's take the last thing. Your life was fueled by fear. So what kind of fear is it? Because I think a lot of people think this is just the way life is. I need
Mm-mm.
money. I need to have food for my kids. I need to have a show. So it is fear, but we don't all call it fear. We call it life. We call it, how were you looking at it back then? Like what were those fears?
The fears of not being able to provide for my family. Yeah. Having to do things because, okay, this is a great question because often my goals back then were based out of pain, right? I need to go to job. I need to go to work. I need to find a job. I need to provide for my family so that my family doesn't starve. So we don't lose our home. So we don't lose our car. These were my goals. These were fear-based goals. So I don't lose something,
And that's what
right?
I wanted you to point out because
Yes.
when people talk about my life was full of fear, they don't resonate. But when you broke it down like that,
Yes.
yes, you are doing it because what you're doing it supposedly so won't happen is a fear that you have. And I'm not saying don't go to work and this, and obviously there's not going to have any money. But if you're doing it with the goal in mind of so they don't starve, then that is the fear thought,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for pointing that out. And actually, if I was if the best way to really point that out, right? There's a lot of things that started to change. I started to change my exercise and eating habits, and I lost some weight. I had some success, but it was still fear-based, right? I was doing it because I hated the way I looked, right?
Mm,
It was based
right.
out of not liking the way I looked. It wasn't based on appreciating who I was and what my body looked like. There was no appreciation. It was because I hated the way I looked. I hated I hated the fact that I was getting sick, right? And so it was still not it was still not gratitude based.
Hmm.
But about 2 years after I had lost some of the weight and I got a little bit healthier, I started applying gratitude only after I watched a particular video. And this video was was this gentleman. He was talking about how happy he was. He was talking about his beautiful wife and his four children and his multi-million-dollar business and how he's a professional speaker and extremely happy, right? And it got me very angry. It got me angry only because I was looking at him, listening to him. And at the time, I was still, quite immature at the time. Now it's 18 years ago. Um, I saw him and I thought to myself, I should be happier than he should be because I at least have arms and legs. The
Hmm.
gentleman who was in the video had no arms and no legs.
Hmm.
And it made me furious. Why should he be happier than me?
Hmm.
Obviously, he had something. And so I had to listen. And his talk was about gratitude, right?
Okay.
He was appreciating everything. And so that is something that I had to start changing from that point on. I started needing to have to appreciate what I had versus what I didn't have. I had to change my focus, regardless of my situation.
Right.
And at that point, it was my goal was to be happy regardless of the situation, have gratitude regardless of the situation, that I don't have to go down with life's downs. That,
Right.
even when they come up, I can still be happy, but when they come down, can I still be happy? And I set that as the new goal to have that peace, that consistent peace.
Right. And now my question for you is, truthfully, I mean, give
Yes.
me an estimate if you don't know, but how long did that take? You know, And I'll say it because of this. When we started, okay, we can go 5 days with gratitude, and
Yes.
you can experience it and be in bliss. And on day six, for whatever reason, the shit hit the roof, everything went to heck, life is upside down, and you're like,
Yes.
this doesn't work.
Yes.
We all have ups and downs, especially when we're trying to change habits, especially when we're trying to change our mind, especially when we're doing all this quote unquote personal development work. How long did it take for you to actually adjust to the complete change?
Yes. And this is an extremely crucial question because it was not overnight. You know, I had to, it took me a while of, okay, can I look in front of the mirror for more than 5 seconds without, feeling gross
Right,
and find
right.
something to appreciate? Because again, I was self loathing.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would do that. I'd be like, okay, I have hands. Yay. Then,
Yep,
go on.
that's my
And,
friend.
and it, and it took a while. And it took a while, but I did it every day, at least one thing. And then after a few weeks, I increased it, maybe two things a day, maybe three things a day,
Okay.
right? And I just increased it more and more because it felt better. Life was better because I was more aware of what is changing
Mm-hmm.
because I'm becoming more grateful.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yes, you're right. Things happen, even if I'm trying to change, especially when I'm trying to change for
Mm-hmm.
the better. Things are going, it almost seems like there's an opposite force, an opposition that's always going to try to stop you from being better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just this test like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you think you have this. Well,
Right.
how about this? How
Mm-hmm.
about this challenge? How about this obstacle?
Right.
What are you going to do about this situation? How are you going to be happy around this? How are you going to be grateful around this?
Right.
And the biggest secret, honestly, that I discovered was if I am too comfortable, I'm not growing.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to appreciate being uncomfortable enough to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was too comfortable, I had to make sure I understood that I need to do something to challenge myself, to help myself grow into that next phase, to help myself
Mm-hmm.
progress.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I don't do it, life will do it for me.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And okay, so a few things. Yes. And it's not so much, as I want to clarify, it's not so much that we can't get comfortable. It's not having to make life hard.
Yes.
But you're absolutely right. If we reach a place where we're content and we don't push ourselves to the next level,
Yes.
then that's not growth.
Yes.
So it's a slight difference. And then with what you said previously, there's a word, I'm trying to remember it. There's a word in quantum physics, so in quantum science, that says everything has an opposite, the tension. So while we're changing and we're trying to do better and better, I personally don't see it as a test, although it sure as heck feels like it, because it does. But I do see it as, okay, we're going this way. So it's like a rubber band. So we're going this way, then the tension yanks us back because the universe needs balance.
Yes.
But then it's a matter of don't get stuck when it yanks you back, just keep going. And then the going gets so much easier. You can move forward in a step and not take 90 years again to go forward. Because that one I had to learn on my own. And that one took years of suffering and saying, why am I back here? Why am I in this place? And then I started understanding, and then things started shifting easier and easier and easier until it's like, okay, it's gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. No, that is exactly the kind of thing, the opposition in all things, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
What it's called? Yeah. I don't know.
Well, it's I think I'm trying to remember it too. I know what it is. I
I
know
know
what you're referring
it
to.
has a
I
word.
think
I just
I
can't.
think it's the second law of thermodynamics or something.
Okay.
Every action has an equal and opposite reaction or opposite something like that.
It's
I don't
something like that.
know.
Yeah.
Something like that. Someone
When
I'm
we
sure.
when we end the show, we're gonna be like, oh, that's what it was.
I know. Always. But we
That's
know what
fine.
we're talking about.
That's fine. So, okay, question for you is, so you've done this practice now, obviously, up to now. You have
Yes.
7 kids.
Yes.
Have they learned that from you? Did they kind of just assimilate that that's how thing is, like, or have they each, because we're each our own person.
Of
So it's
course.
not that we did it at home, all my kids are saints because we all have our things. But have you noticed if it's has it helped them? Did they learn that? Did they see that? Because usually what you learn from mom and dad is what you stick with.
Certainly. And there are interesting, that's an interesting scenario because mom, first of all, mom and dad were very much on opposite sides of things sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so they had to kind of see, well, mom believes this and dad believes this,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it wasn't like mom and dad were pitting each other against each other. We weren't saying, well, you need to listen to me because your dad is wrong, or you need to listen to
Right.
your mom because there wasn't anything like that. It was, well, why don't you understand what the principles are, behind why mom thinks one thing is right or why mom or
Okay.
dad thinks. And it wasn't always like that. There was a lot of times where we're on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was basically understanding, helping them to really appreciate thinking for themselves, right? And understanding how this works. So when you ask if they assimilated any of this gratitude behavior, they assimilate it in their own way because, again, like you said, they're their own person, right?
Right.
They're going to take what they feel is right and they're going to experiment with it, right? And maybe after a short time they're going to see, okay, that wasn't correct or that was correct, or maybe after a short time they're going to adjust it a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
according to how they're living their life. And who knows, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 20 years, maybe in 30 years, they go back to, well, mom and dad were right.
Right.
We need to start doing it that way again because I've tried this for the last 20 years my way and it doesn't work.
Right.
I've done that myself, with my own parents,
Right.
right? I've
Right.
seen the things they've taught and I've tried it my way, certain things, and it's worked. And other things, I'm like, okay, mom and dad knew better with this particular scenario or that particular scenario. I love my parents.
Mm-hmm.
They raised me in I learned a lot of things from them. And my parents, or excuse me, a lot of people will always say, "Wow, how are you like this?" Well, that's because of my dad. Or why are you this way? Really good positive traits. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm that way because of my mom. I
Mm-hmm.
love babies all the time, for example. That's something unusual for a man, I guess. But it's something that both my parents love. They love little children. So do
Mm-hmm.
I.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people call me a gentleman and they say, well, how did you be that way? My dad, I always saw him
Right.
opening doors, helping people. Um, and sometimes they'll say, well, how are you so thoughtful about certain things? How are you able to anticipate people's needs? Well, that's from my mom's side. My
Right.
mom is able to see beyond and understand what people's needs are. And so
Right.
this it's a good combination of things that they've taken up from me. And that's things because of example. So my kids have done the same thing. You know, they've taken their want and need to help people who are less fortunate, and they do their own thing. I just asked them the other day, I said, I remember you kids, you would always be, helping people. When you saw people on the street, holding up a cardboard sign, you'd want to go over there and give them food or give them money. When was the last time you did that? Because they're now moved out. I have no idea what they're doing.
Right.
Always said, oh, just last week, I gave someone in front of Walmart a sandwich. I'm just like, good. I'm glad you're still keeping that up.
Right. Right. And that's a way, and going back to the gratitude, that's a way that you as an adult now,
Yes.
them as adult children,
Yes.
you can kind of always go back to when my point I'm going to try to say is we can always find something to be grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they notice that they were like that and you supported it and you were this, they're grateful for that. And that extends to people outside of our families because of the way that they are, because they're grateful for the things that they do have. They're not running by fear, living their life by fear. They're not giving the man in Walmart a sandwich because they're fearful they won't have one. It's you completely changed. So it did help because you completely changed the environment that they grew up in with your own gratitude by stopping that fear living decision making. You've allowed them the space to be whatever it is they choose to be. And at the same time, now you as the adult can look back and say to your parents, wow, I'm grateful dad was like that because I'm like that and I enjoy being like that. So what I'm trying to get at is we can always find something to be grateful for, even if we have to dig a little deeper and think, Not like I'm just grateful for my water, but it's like I'm grateful for what I learned from my parents, or I'm grateful for the good and bad because we've survived.
You make an interesting point, a really good point too. And I only started thinking about this in the last few years, just seeing how my kids grow up, everything they've learned, everything they are, who they are, right? It's all decisions based on, what their mom and me taught them,
Right.
right? And they'll either choose to go with it or
Right.
not go with it,
I was
right?
thinking that. Uh-huh.
It's just so interesting. And it's the same thing with my parents too. I am who I am now because of decisions I made, whether it's in line with how they taught or maybe slight deviation or adjustment from what they taught,
Hmm.
but kind of like you said, we're all appreciating and being grateful for certain things, but it is that mindset. It is still that mindset that's there, the resilience of that mindset.
Hmm.
Regardless of what happens, I know I'm going to be fine. I know I'm going to learn from it.
Right. So let's talk about a little bit of tools. So you started with being grateful for one thing.
Yes.
Now that you've done it for 20 years, let's say somebody's listening, somebody's like, okay, I've tried this before, been there, done that, not, or maybe they just need okay, I can bump up my gratitude. Do you have any tools or any suggestions for them that they can start with that they can try that something like maybe that worked for you that you're like, well, I tried this, but wow, it actually, changed more than I thought would.
It's such a crucial question because yes, it is evolved. It went from the simple, you know, as soon as I get up in the morning, writing three things that I'm grateful for, right? As soon as I get up, before touching my phone, before anything else. And before going to bed, writing three things that I'm grateful for that happened that day, right? And they don't have to be huge, a small thing. Maybe a baby smiled at me or something like that. And it went from that to understanding that I had to change many more things. I had to change what I was appreciating on a daily basis.
Okay.
I had to change my programming because we're being programmed wherever we go. We are consistently being programmed, being bombarded, especially on our devices, on TV, on billboards, wherever we go. Something is always trying to catch our attention or plant certain seeds of thought in us,
Mm-hmm.
one way or another.
Hmm.
And the things that I was appreciating, as I mentioned to you before, were toxic,
Hmm.
right? They were movies and lyrics and books and all kinds of media, thoughts, people, ideas that were not healthy for me,
Right.
that were toxic for me. I was entertaining them and they were adding to my stress.
Right.
News in particular was adding to my stress, reading it or listening to it, watching it. I
Nah.
don't, I cut that out. I
Nah.
cut that out a long time ago. For me, I cut that out a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean,
But
same.
it was healthier for me.
Yeah.
So I had to understand what to say no to, right? That's the first thing, right? But at the same time, I know that I can't completely cut everything out. I have to go online for work, right? I go on my phone. I'm either on my phone or on my computer 8 or 9 hours a day working in some way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
I'm on social media or whatever. I'm getting marketed to all the time. You have these little pop-ups all the time. Just things are trying to be marketed. I can only control that so much. But what I can control is what I want, is what I choose to market to myself. So one of the things that I do, right? It sounds like, wow, it's simple. Since things are being marketed to me on my screen all the time, I chose to market myself. So I have, and I'm not marketing any kind of an app, but it's a subliminal tool app, right? It's a subliminal app that basically I can put in whatever messages I want. I can put in whatever visuals, pictures that I want.
Hmm.
And every 3 or 4 seconds, it pops up for about half a second on my screen. And the things that I want, the things that I choose, right? As I'm working, these are subliminal, right? They're only popping up for half a second, maybe a quarter of a second every 3 or 4 seconds. Things that I want to appreciate, that I'm choosing for myself.
Nice.
That has made a significant impact and improvement in the way I see things
Hmm.
because I'm combating, again, I'm competing with what social media in the
Everything
world,
else. Hmm.
everything else.
Hmm.
Because when it comes down to it, one of the things that was super, super interesting, one of my kids a few years ago, she took a challenge to be off of her phone for a week. Before she went off of her phone, she was a big mess of anxiety, depression, sadness, right? Entitlement. She was this big ball of mess. She took that challenge to be off for a week and she felt immensely better.
Yeah.
Immensely better. She felt happier. She felt more joyful. She was able to feel that again, more hopeful, more grateful.
Hmm.
And it was an interesting experiment that really points to the validity of, yes, we're consistently being marketed to, because you're always being told, right? If you don't have this, you're nothing. If you
Right.
don't buy this, you're nothing. If you don't look like this person, you're fat, or whatever it is. There's a lot of
Right.
things, a lot of messaging out there that is continuously bombarding us. And
Right.
so I thought to myself, I can do that for my own sake, right? I can program myself on my phone. Again, one thing that it was a free app. I don't even remember what it's called because I'm not trying to market it. But the
Hmm.
point is that you can create what
Right.
it is you appreciate.
Right.
And that's been a huge, huge help.
And that's amazing. And I love that you said that because let's talk about when you talk about getting away from the toxic. Again, straight out, when I was maybe, I don't know, 13, 14, I liked rock. Not that I don't like rock still.
Mhm.
However, at some point in my adult life, I listened to a few of the songs I used to like love, and I actually heard the lyrics,
Yes.
and I was like, wow. And the thing is, we're manifestors. We create with our voice. We create with our mental, with what we're thinking. And when we like a song, we're singing it with such passion that we're actually putting energy. But what energy is it? So when you talk about getting away from like music and movies and stuff like that, it's literally listen to what are we watching? Like, I'll tell you right now, I will go Netflix and binge. Like, I'm not away from that, the whole thing. But I'm aware that if I'm watching something, it's like, that's going to stay in my subconscious. How much
Yeah.
of it do I want to watch? I mean, I like crime things, not to that degree, but like this kind of movie or that. And sometimes I can feel the heaviness. And it's like, yeah, maybe I don't want to keep watching this season. Like, let me stop watching that series because I can feel it's not fun anymore. My energy's being drained. Number one. Number two, I love that you shared about that app because there are probably so many different things right now that people can look into. But it's a matter of doing the intention and literally saying, okay, if I get to sub-program my mind with the things that I want, why would I not take advantage of that and let all the other things come in? Because you're absolutely right. I can totally see how all the marketing platforms everywhere, like you said, billboards here, there, the conversations of people, they're all go this way, go that way, go this, do this, buy that, buy now. Time is ending. The sale is now. You clicked on this and I know you want it, but you still haven't bought it. Why? And it's like this, all this anxiety building that if we're not aware and actually feeding ourselves with more calm, positive, and things that we want, then we are taking up space. Like there's times that I tell people our brain is like a computer. We either let it fill up with all those cookies of all those websites, of all those things, storing up memory and storing up junk that the computer eventually starts freaking out because it's like it can't carry all these things that we don't even know where we got it from. Or we clean out the computer, clean out the memory, clean out the cache or whatever it's called, and actually start using it for better, for things that we actually do want to see, things that we actually do want to talk about, people we want to meet. It's as simple as that. And yet we forget.
You hit the nail on the head with it being of the simplicity. It's simple, it's easy, but majority of the people, they won't do the simple and easy things. It's
True,
unfortunate
true.
because life complicates things. They hear different messages that say, oh, it's harder than that.
Right.
you know
It's too simple, it won't work.
it's too simple, it won't work. And there's not enough discipline to focus on the simplicity of it, right? The focus, we are having our focus taken away left and
Yeah.
right. How many different ways are we being pulled every single day? 18, 20, 100? Here's another interesting thought. I think I've seen so many different research out there that, the average person has maybe between 50,000 and 100,000 thoughts a day. Let's go with 100,000 thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is that 90% of those thoughts we have every day are the
Right.
same. And so what are we entertaining 90% of the time every single day, right? Are we just regurgitating what we brought in? If the things that we are looking at or appreciating in terms of media, social media, how we're being marketed to were food, would you eat it?
Right.
Would you? Or would you not eat it?
Right.
I mean, we hear all the time people talking about, eating clean and making sure we take into our, lots of water and making sure we eat right. But do we do that emotionally, mentally, spiritually?
Yeah. Yeah. And with the focus, the discipline, the focus, it goes there as well because the
Yes.
discipline and focus is also with the healthy eating. You eat well for 5 days and then you crave a hamburger. You eat well for this and then you crave something else. And it's the discipline to say, okay, maybe I can treat myself, but it's a discipline to go back until you stop the craving. Because part of what I always tell everybody is we're human. It's not ditch everything and suffer and forget the pizza and forget the this and forget. Have moderation. Learn how to have discipline. Learn how to be able to have the cookie, have the cake, enjoy it, but don't make it your 99% of your diet. I mean,
Sure.
and it's all of that. But then the focus, it's an interesting portion because we're going back to social media. This generation and our generation, we're being trained, and the little ones even more. We're
Mm-hmm.
being trained to not have focus.
Yes.
30-second reels. Okay, 90-second reels. People are now listening to conversations 15 minutes long and they find it forever.
Yep.
I talked to somebody of my daughter's age and she was like, I can't sit through a movie. I'm like, a movie? It's entertaining. She's like, no, I want the in, the out, the whatever. 2 hours is too long. And I'm like, are you serious? We're being trained to have no focus, dispersed attention, all of these different things. And the saddest, craziest, weirdest part, we all go along with it. We all go along with it.
We've been numbed. This is interesting. Whatever algorithm is out there in social media or media, it's training us to be numb to, like, this is fine. Everything's on fire, but we're fine.
Right.
It's sad. The awareness is being taken away. The awareness, the self-awareness of what things are doing to us. It's unfortunate. It really is. And I was there. I was right there with them, 2 decades ago. And being online was only 5 years old at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and there wasn't very much influence. And at that time, you know,
True.
I was already being distracted that much. I mean, there's so much more now. It's infinitely more now with social media, and to have it's. I mean, I go back and think if I could do everything over again, right? It's about it. Is social media necessarily bad? Is media necessarily bad? It's of course in the way you use it. You can't say money is bad. You can't say air is bad or food is bad. How are you using it?
Right.
It's still in that same mindset. So just making that correction there, that again, everyone is appreciating something all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but what is it?
Right.
It's just this nuance of gratitude,
Right.
appreciation. We're all doing it. We all have that power. Like you said, we're all manifestors.
Mm-hmm.
What are we taking in order to manifest? Do we like the way our lives are? I hear so much from the younger generation, from my children's generation, about how hard things are and complaining consistently. And I can understand every now and then venting about it. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're living in it, because that's what I used to do in the past, right? I
Mm-hmm.
used to complain and be angry and be, vengeful or something to that. And the problem was, it wasn't just for a few minutes or an hour. It was for days or even weeks, which turned into years, unfortunately.
Right.
of being angry, of being sad, as opposed to being able to resolve it. And what am I going to do to change that? Because I have that power. How am I going to respond to the situation versus being reactive to it?
Yes. And the kicker is sometimes it's easier to blame the outside than have to stop and take responsibility.
Oh yes. Oh yes. And oh, yes, that's the thing that this is one of the reasons I speak on gratitude. This is one of my motivations for talking to people one on one or in large conventions and conferences about gratitude, because I want people to be able to be self reliant,
Mhm.
right? I want them to take the power back that everything else has been stripping away from them, that the world has been stripping away. Take it back and understand the divinity of their own power, right? Because the world understands that and they're taking advantage and exploiting and corrupting that power.
Mhm.
But I want people to understand and take back that power and appreciate it for themselves, think for themselves, really truly understand the kind of power that there is in their choice, in their moral agency.
Right. I love that. No, I love that because it's true. It's like gratitude is a simple step that can magically change your life and you're proof of it. I mean, that's why we're here. You're proof of it. But it's that first step into being self-reliant, into, okay, now I get to experience this thing called life everybody was so happily sharing and talking about. Okay, now I see why people were so happy. Okay, now what do I do to continue this? What do I do to do this? What do I do? So it's that first step to feeling good about life because it feels good to be happy about life. It really does. When we're living, like you said, fueled by fear, getting up every morning sucks. You have to go to work because if you don't have money. If you da 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 da. But when you wake up with gratitude, it's not I have to go to work, I get to go to work.
Yes.
And it's such a mind shift, like you said. It's such a shift that of course the day's going to go better. And even if something happens, you're reacting differently because you're in a different state. And I think that's what's happening. There's so many people running around in a very disempowered, fearful state of everything that's happening that they give no, see, we're running in circles. They give no moment to something that could be so simple
Yep.
as just giving gratitude. I'll give a perfect example. Flat out, we're recording this. Two
Mhm.
hurricanes just hit Florida. Don't know
Yes.
when we're uploading, but last night, Milton hit Florida. I am currently in Pensacola, Florida. I can perfectly see, which is the part that I want to share. I can perfectly see both sides of this playing out on Facebook. There are so many people in anxiety and in fear because of hurricane, which is understandable. I grew up in South Florida. I understand what a hurricane is. 2 weeks ago was a massive hurricane, Helena, that really did some damage to a lot of states. It wasn't just like even one state. So I understand the fear. But is it fear or is it worry? If you get into fear, you paralyze yourself. If you get into worry, you're also paralyzing yourself. However, if you're aware, okay, this thing is coming, there's no stopping it. It is Mother Nature. I mean, I don't care what you say, there's no stopping it. Do I stay or do I go? Some people evacuated, some people stayed. But it was the amount of fear that was like brought up. And if you're going to leave, leave now. And the traffic, and have you seen this? And there's no toilet paper and there's no water. And it's like, okay, fine. And then at the same time, I see the people that here where I am in the panhandle are all saying, number one, prayers. Number two, look how touching it is that I want to cry. Like I literally want to cry. I've taken screenshots to post it on my Facebook, but I still haven't done it. I've been busy. But screenshots of people saying, I'm in Pensacola, I'm in Navarre, I'm here, I'm there. I have 4 acres of land. Bring your RV, bring this, bring your pets, we'll make it work. Other people were saying, I have something that has been rebuilding. It's not like divine, but you'll have shelter if you need food. this morning before all of my calls, my sister came to me because I'm staying at her house. My sister came to me and she was like, I found this post, somebody's taking a truck with supplies. So I went to the beach this morning. I grounded myself. I needed also to get away from the computer because even if I'm not on social media, the computer is also very, I don't know what it's called, but whatever, you got me. And then I went to the grocery store to buy things because this man, thankfully, is going to go in a truck and is arranging it and is making the logistics. So what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of people in fear, and then there's a lot of people in love, in
Yeah.
heart, in
Yeah.
gratitude, in
Mhm.
we're thankful Helena didn't hit us, but we're gonna go help our neighbors.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Uh, My wife and I were talking about this yesterday. It's sad because one of our children was harping about this, about how everything was what was going on in Florida with the hurricanes, and he was harping about all the things that, the wrong things. No one wants to help. No one wants to serve. The irony is that, every now and then my wife will go deliver food for people who need food, from food shelters,
Mhm.
food banks, and we'll invite him, but he says no. I don't want
Right,
to do that.
right,
Which it's an interesting irony, you
right,
know, that there's sometimes a dichotomy that comes with how things seem versus what you personally are able to do,
right.
and there's one thing to complain, but there's one thing to complain and provide a solution. And I'm going to change because I don't like what I'm seeing.
Hmm.
It's like what Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world.
Hmm.
So then change, and it's interesting you mentioned all the fear, right? And how it's paralyzing. And I'm going to go back to just media, and I'm just going to go back to sometimes the movies and the shows that I watched. There are some times where I'm just like, I look back and I saw, why did I want to continuously invoke a feeling of fear, even though it was based on something fictional?
Right.
Why do I want to have to invoke something real in me
Well, the brain doesn't
based
know
on
the
something?
difference.
Exactly. The mind does not know the difference. And so why do we continue to subject ourselves to that? Because we're going to manifest it as reality. When you manifest it as reality, do you really want that stuff happening in real life or not? And so that's what caused me to change a lot of my things. Music, I loved hip hop and rap. I loved it. And I still do. I like the beats and everything, but I don't listen to it as much anymore,
Right,
you know? Just because, and there are some that are good, right?
right,
There's some that have some good lyrics and such things, but the ones that I was listening to were not.
right.
And they were manifesting in my life in ways that I didn't realize at the time. Looking back, I realize it. And this is the other thing, by the way, with gratitude that I've learned to appreciate with the past, the present, and the future. I've learned to use them all as tools,
Hmm.
right? Most people, they see the past and they're depressed and they're sad, because they're living in the past so much.
Right.
Most people who are living in the future too much are so anxious and so filled with anxiety, because they don't know what's going to happen. But in reality, when we change how we appreciate each one of these aspects of time, past, present, and future, it makes all the difference because I see the past as something I can learn from. I leverage the tool of the past and see, how can I go back? If I'm going to go back there, I don't want to dwell there, but what am I going to learn? What can I come back and what can I see differently?
Yes.
And how can I see that it's been affecting my present, right? But a lot of people think, oh, my past equals my present. Only if you allow it and in how you allow it. As far as the future goes, I look at the future and I think, you know what? That is a huge filter with how I can choose to live presently. If I want a different future, I'm going to make that future as big as possible. I want it to stretch me and grow me so that I allow myself and open myself up to any kind of inspiration that will come to help me achieve that,
Hmm.
whatever that looks like. And I'm not going to be afraid of it. I'm not going to be in fear or anxious of the future. So this is quite often what people do, right? They're either in the past or the future, or they're afraid of the future because of the past, leveraging it in the wrong ways. And this is something else I've had to learn about gratitude, how to appreciate past, present, and future.
Yeah.
It's been extremely powerful.
No, and I can totally see that. And I know we're running out of time, but
Sure.
I can totally see that because sometimes when we look at the past and we're like the things that happened that are not so good, that we didn't like, that we didn't enjoy. how are we able to find the gratitude in that lesson, even though it was hard? Because there's always a lesson. So it really takes you into a self-exploration. And I think another practice is the judgment. How do we go back there and not judge the situation, the happening, the this, the that? I mean, it takes a lot, but we'll stick with the gratitude for now. We'll come on another day. We'll do another episode on the thing
Of course, of
because it could
course.
go to so many ways. Because the other thing that you mentioned, and I'll say it really quickly, is when you're talking about the movies, why do we watch something that scares us? Because we have trained our body for the fear and the adrenaline and fear. And when the body doesn't have it, we feel off. And it's a matter of shifting what our body is actually craving because we've taught it to crave the anxiety, the worry, the depression. Those are all chemical things, literally proven that those are all chemical reactions in our body. When we take it away, our body craves it. That's why we go back to it. That's why, even though it scares the hell out of us, we enjoy it.
The security of it.
Exactly. It is insane. It is
It is.
crazy how our society is that we don't know it and we keep acting on it unless we make a change.
Absolutely.
Kenneth, thank you. Thank you. Listen to me. I really can't talk today.
It's all good.
Whatever. Thank you so much for your time today. Where can people follow you? Because I would love for them to know the simplicity of gratitude, where
Certainly.
you talk, what you do, and all the information you have, because it is such a simple yet profound item that can change their life.
Absolutely. And, I have my own website, KennethApplegate.com. And I mean, I have a few other links in there. I'm still building out a few other things on Facebook and Insta and such things. But also, if some people that they're on LinkedIn, you can find me on Kenneth Applegate as well there. I'm deemed, or I am dubbed the thankful thought leader, in LinkedIn. So that's another place you can follow me as well. Again, building a few things out in between the speaking engagements and such things. So I need to catch up a little bit. I need to appreciate a little bit more how I can reach more people through these mediums.
No, perfect. Thank you so much again for your time. I'm going to put all the links in the bottom so everybody can connect, follow you, pass you around. Um, and yeah, just thank you for the conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been so enlightening.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.